They know that if there is no assault weapons ban passed, then we will vote them out.
For far too long, these names, these black girls and women, have been just numbers. I'm here to say never again for those girls too.
We are dying because we have nothing in Los Angeles. We are dying because we have nothing in Ferguson, and we are dying because we have nothing in Chicago.
Hello again, everyone. What a great welcome. What a great welcome to these three young activists. Hello again, everyone. I'm Athena Jones. I'm a national correspondent with CNN here in New York. Joining me on the stage is three of the young activists you saw in that video. I'm going to speak with each of you individually for a few minutes just so the audience can hear your story uninterrupted. So first to you, Delaney Tarr. The horrific shooting at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School changed your life forever. It was on Valentine's Day. Tell us, where were you in the school? What did you see? What did you hear?
Well, first I would like to address the fact that today, it is the 2-month anniversary of the shooting, wow. Which seems like it hasn't been a while, but so much has happened. But we are still grieving, and that's something that I would like to address because we're in a place where we have to be activists, but we're victims of a school shooting. And it's a very hard balance to have. But as for that day, I was in my newspaper class, and we were supposed to be going around and interviewing people. We had just come back into the classroom, and we heard the fire alarm go off, and we were confused because it had already gone off that day, but we started evacuating anyways. And that's when we started hearing screaming, and when teachers started saying it was a code red, and everybody started running. I made it back into my classroom, and after a little bit, we went into the closet, and we hid there for over 2 hours, likely. It was this terrifying purgatory where you don't necessarily know what's going on, and people were asking me, messaging me, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, I don't really know, because we didn't know where the shooter was. We didn't know if he had been detained. We didn't know if people were dead. We didn't know if people were injured. We were just sitting there, fearing for our lives, waiting for a long time.
And so the echoes of that experience will echo across your entire life, and it's driven you to this activism. Tell me, before the shooting, were you politically engaged? What did you want to do with your life before the shooting, and what would you like to do with it now?
I'd always been very politically engaged. Thankfully, I came from an area where we had been given the privilege to have this education, to have this very thorough discussion on current events, to be able to speak out on how we feel on certain issues. I was in politics club, and I was in newspaper and TV production. My dream had always been to be an on-air news anchor because I wanted to tell people's stories, and I wanted to get messages out there. Since then, I mean, I still do love journalism with a fiery passion because it's what brings light to issues like this. It's what fuels the conversation. But I have a newfound passion for activism and for actually stepping my toe into the field of politics because there's a difference between telling the story and being the story. And I'm figuring that out right now.
Right. Now, one thing that you and the other activists did as part of Never Again and March for Our Lives, and you've done it so well, is use social media, and not just to organize, but also to spread your message. It's given you a much more powerful voice in many ways than previous generations. Talk to me about the importance of having that voice and using social media.
Well, like I said, media does fuel a story. However, social media is where we get our direct message out there. We don't have to be edited. We don't have to be manipulated. We're just saying how we feel. And we speak that digital language in a way that many that are older than us don't necessarily know how to. No hate there, but... But we know how to use Twitter and Instagram and Facebook to our advantage. We know how to get that message out there. And it's helped us stay true to our grassroots title, but it's helped us reach a much larger audience, which is a privilege that we are glad to have.
Now, you're going to be ending your high school soon. How will you keep the passion and the organizing alive when you and your classmates, this powerful collection of students, when you all disperse, or many of you disperse and go off to college, or maybe some stay behind, others go to college? How do you keep it going?
I mean, right now we're in what we like to call phase 2, because obviously the next big step is the midterm elections, because that's when we are going to get that voter mobilization and get people in office that can do the right thing. And one of the few benefits of having people all over the country is that we'll have these people in different communities able to do that outreach that we can't do if we're all based in Florida. We're planning on traveling the country, communicating with different key districts. We're attempting to get as many donations as possible, which is where you all come in, because we do need that funding. We need those people voting. We need those people in power to do something besides just sitting and applauding. This is where everyone else comes in, where everybody can take that step up and take action.
Excellent. Well, you guys have all spoken. Many of you students from Parkland have spoken forcefully about the fact that you're going to be voting out lawmakers who don't follow the agenda you've been pushing, or that who don't support the changes you want to see. It sounds to me like you're preparing to do that even just as soon as you leave high school. You're turning 18 in July, and you're going to get involved in the midterms.
Yes, I'm very excited about turning 18 because we oftentimes are dismissed as children. There's a large benefit to being young. We've obviously, if we'd been older, we wouldn't have been able to do this. But once I turn 18, I'm getting out there, I'm voting, and I implore every single one of you to get out there and vote for the right thing as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Delaney. I'm going to turn to Naomi Wadler. Hi, Naomi.
Hi.
I'm sure many of you have seen Naomi before. She delivered that speech at March for Our Lives. Great speech. Now, high schools across the country staged walkouts on March 14th. But you're only in 5th grade. But you held a demonstration at your school in Alexandria, Virginia, and you added 1 extra minute to the protest. Tell us about the girl who inspired that extra minute.
So, the girl who inspired the extra minute at my elementary school walkout was Cortland Arrington. She was shot in her school in Alabama, and she's black. And way too often, black women, black girls, they're shot and people don't care. They become statistics. They can't live up to their full potential because JonBenet Ramsey, with no disrespect to the family, if she didn't have blue eyes, she didn't have blonde hair, she didn't have that light complexion, she wouldn't be in every grocery cart checkout. You wouldn't see her face everywhere because hundreds of black girls are killed every year and nobody knows, nobody pays attention. Black women have the highest homicide rates. And I thought it would be important to get a message across to some of my white peers, some of their parents, really to the world.
So it's important to you to bring attention to people, to victims who are not getting all the news coverage and all the headlines. You're not on social media, so how did you spread the word about your demonstration at your school that day?
Well, I had to come up with another way, and obviously, we're still in 5th grade. I mean, we're in elementary school. So we talked about it a lot at recess, because that's a thing. And
that's great. First protest scheduled at a recess.
And so we talked about it there. We talked about it at each other's houses. Every Saturday we had meetings and we put together a press packet. And we talked about it. Our relatives would come over and we told them. Our parents were like on Facebook and like. So
they helped spread the message?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, there's a lot of, my mom's Facebook page was full of the walkout stuff. And the meetings definitely helped. We needed permission slips. I know, because that's the same lawn that we read on. And we needed permission slips for this walkout. And so we got the permission slips and we ended up having 60 plus kids on our lawn.
Excellent, excellent. Now, you wrote the speech that you read for the March for Our Lives. That speech went viral immediately. What did you learn from the speeches of the Parkland kids? I know Emma Gonzalez struck a particular chord with you. Tell us why.
So, Emma is a woman of color, too. She's Hispanic, and I took a lot from that because I have somebody who is of color who I can look to. I noticed that she was also very passionate about what she spoke about. She got angry, she got sad, she got happy. She had all these emotions that she put into the deliverance of her speech. And so I remember when I was writing my speech, I watched her 11-minute speech like 10 times. And eventually, so when I had to write mine that night, I remembered back and I said, well, I need to be passionate. I need to show people that I'm not a cute 11-year-old that they can hug and kiss, and that and that I can deliver a message and and get that reaction.
So you are by no means just a cute 11-year-old. You are accomplished. You have spoken before an audience that I think a lot of people in this room would never be able to speak in front of. Just leave us with what your message is. You talk about being inspired by this young woman who was killed and didn't make headlines. Just tell us once again why it is so important for people to understand that gun violence is affecting lots of different kinds of people, lots of different segments of the community.
All right. When I was 5, Trayvon Martin was killed. And I remember I went to my mom and I said, Mommy, why did he die? And she said, well, sweetheart, people thought he was scary because of his color. And when I was in preschool, a boy asked me why I was brown. I've had boys touch my butt, that I had a butt as big as the solar system. I've had people tell me in a game that I should be the slave or the beggar woman.
Goodness gracious.
It's not a mystery to me. It's not foreign. I've had experience with racism. I've had experience with stereotypes. And so I was at this age where I was able to be a lot more eloquent and I was able to really register with people. And so I wanted to do something. I mean, there shouldn't be an age limit for being aware and for and for knowing and understanding the problems around you and wanting to do something about it.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Now, on to, last but not least, Eva Lewis. Tell us a little bit about the community you grew up in, the south side of Chicago, where gun violence doesn't always make the headlines we see after a school shooting like we saw in Parkland or the many others.
I'm from the South Shore neighborhood in Chicago. It is the only East Side neighborhood, y'all, just saying. And I have so much pride in being from the South Side, but I also have so much trauma. I went to school an hour away from my house. So my body is used to waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning and only seeing my community in the dark. So I'd get up early hours, come home late nights because extracurriculars and stuff like that. And it is traumatic to not have anything of substance in the community around you, and then to go on the north side of Chicago and see what I would call an oasis, right? You have everything you need. You have 5 options of grocery stores, right to leisure, education, like just everything that a person would need. And I'm like, why don't my people get that? What makes us undeserving? And it's not necessarily a sad narrative to be from the South Side, but it's definitely one of survival, because my people we can make something out of nothing, and that's what we do. And oftentimes our methods are demonized, but you can't fault people for trying to survive.
Now you speak about going to school across town, getting up super early with a group of people, I understand. Now, was it that contrast? You know, you live in one community and you see another community that has so much more, sort of the world as it could be, if only your community had those resources. Was it that contrast that inspired you to start Youth for Black Lives? Yeah,
so I started Youth for Black Lives with 3 other girls from around the South Side originally, and my friend Maxine went. She was like, Philando Castile and Alton Sterling have been killed. I want to do a protest. Her flyer went viral, and I had a little bit of experience in organizing, so I knew how to make a press release. That's literally all I had, a press release. And I was like, do you need help? And the only people that asked to help her were Black girls. We were all 17 and under. And we didn't take help from anyone else. We said, you know what, this is who wants to do it. We're going to keep this narrative, and we're going to do that. And after we had 2,000 people with no arrest protesting for Black lives, we decided to create a collective to keep that going.
Excellent. Now, you've been a young leader for some time. You also organized a peaceful protest. I think you mentioned that this is a peaceful protest as part of sort of the beginnings of Youth for Black Lives. That's the one you're speaking of, was the summer of 2016. Tell us more about this 2,000-person protest where there were no arrests. What do you guys do at that protest?
So we had a sit-in. We were silent in our sit-in, and we just wanted people to really think about the fact that so many Black people aren't really in a position to speak out. Our violence, the violence that we face in our communities often goes unheard. And that was the whole point. So we had banners of people being like Asian Americans for Black lives, Latinx people for Black lives, and that was really powerful. And we just told the police, I literally walked up to the police and I was like, you're not arresting anyone. And they were like, what? And I was like, no, you're not arresting anyone. Because that weekend, we had 3 protests in Chicago, and all you saw on the news were thugs protesting, Black Lives Matter thugs. Like, it was, so many of my mentors were in jail that weekend. And that was really discouraging, and we knew that would happen with us, but we decided to leverage our education, right? So we were 4 Black girls who had some access to the #1 education in the city, and we decided that if they want to box us into respectability politics, we're going to use those respectability politics to advocate for our people.
Certainly. Do you feel that as a young woman of color, as a young woman from the South Side, that you have a special power to get this message across in a different way?
Yes, I definitely do, right? So I've had access to this top-notch education, and what I did with it was create a nonprofit. So in 2015, my junior year of high school, I decided that I was going to create a nonprofit. It was going to be activism through art, and I was going to share people's narratives. But as I got a little bit more into the ideology of sociology, I was like, there must be a way that I can create an equitable society, because I saw that Rahm Emanuel didn't care about us. I saw that we weren't getting the funding that we needed in our schools. I saw that we didn't have any trauma centers, even though all of the deaths happened in our neighborhood, but we have to go an hour away to seek help. I saw that we don't have a single grocery store in my neighborhood, and I was like, how do I create an equitable society without relying on the government? And so the I Project now has a campaign called Education Emancipation. I'm raising $25,000 to help Boucher Elementary, which is in my immediate neighborhood. If we get $25,000 and each child can get a laptop, and that is our first step in the scaffold to create an equitable South Shore and an equitable South Side and West Side altogether.
Wonderful. Excellent.